I had already done it by the time I sat down. My name is Winifred. People call me Winnie, 93 years old. I have been called Winnie since before I can remember anyone calling me anything else. The only person who ever used my full name was my mother, and she only did it when she thought I was wasting myself on something. Winifred. She said it the way other people say honestly. She was usually right. I have a filing cabinet in the bottom of my bedroom closet, green metal. The old kind, with a handle that sticks when the weather has been damp, which in this part of the country is most of the time. I have had that cabinet since my son was in grade school. It has followed me through 2 moves and 1 small fire that did not touch the bedroom. Thank God, because everything I own of real importance was in there. Tax returns going back 40 years. The deed to this house. My son's birth certificate, still in the original envelope from the hospital, with the little footprint on the card inside. Old utility bills I cannot throw away because someday I have a feeling I will need to prove I was here. And in the back, in a folder, I labeled myself in black marker a long time ago. Final. I got down on my knees and opened that cabinet the night my son drove away. He had come that afternoon. He does not visit often now, and when he does, he parks in the street instead of the driveway. I noticed that the first time it happened. I have not said anything about it. There are things you notice and decide not to name, because the naming of them makes them too solid to take back. I had put out the lemon cookies, the little ones with the powdered sugar. He used to eat them by the handful when he was a boy. He would come in from school and go straight to the kitchen, and I would hear the cabinet open before I even heard him say he was home. I still buy them when I know he is coming. I have been doing that for close to 60 years. I do not plan to stop. He did not touch one. He sat on the edge of my sofa, not back in it, on the edge, with his hands on his knees, and he told me, very calmly, the way you tell someone their car has a flat, that he did not think I should come to the ceremony. I said, "What ceremony?" He said, "The wedding, Mom. I need to stop here and tell you something about my son, because I do not want you to think this story is simple. He was a good boy. I mean that without reservation. He was the kind of child who drew pictures of the 2 of us and taped them to the refrigerator and never thought about whether that was something boys were supposed to do. He called me every Sunday through college. He sat with me in the hospital the year I had my hip done. Sat there the whole day, brought a book, fell asleep in the chair by 4 in the afternoon. I have a photograph of him asleep in that chair. I kept it for years in the front of the filing cabinet, not in the back. I do not know exactly when it changed. I have been trying to trace it, the way you try to trace a crack in a wall back to where it started, and I cannot find the single point. It is more like the whole wall shifted, slowly, over years, and one day you look up, and the crack is just there. His fiancée at the time was named Paulette. She had been waiting in the car. He called her in after he said what he said about the ceremony. She walked through my front door without knocking and looked around my living room, the way people look at a house they are trying to find the polite version of. She had on a cream blazer, very clean, very pressed, the kind of clean that takes effort. She looked at me, not quite at me, and said, "We have been thinking about your situation. There are some really lovely places, very peaceful, where you could focus on your health. Clean, well-staffed. You would have company." I said, "This is my home." She said, "Of course it is." The smile did not change. My son was looking at his hands. After they left, I sat in my chair. The late afternoon came through the window and moved across the floor the way it does at this time of year, that low winter angle that makes everything look a little older than it is. I could hear the refrigerator, that low hum it has been making for 2 years that I keep meaning to have someone look at. I sat there and listened to it and did not think anything in particular. Then I got up and went to the closet. The folder was where it always was. I took it to the bed and opened it. The will was on top. 4 pages, typed, notarized, with my signature at the bottom in the handwriting I have had since I was 17 years old. It has not changed much, my handwriting. My mother used to say that meant something about a person's character, that their handwriting stayed consistent. I do not know if that is true. I just know mine has stayed the same. At the top of the beneficiary section was my son's name. I sat there looking at it for a long time. I want to tell you about the money, because I think it is the part of the story that is easiest to misunderstand. I was not a wealthy woman in any way that showed. What I had, I built slowly, over decades, in a way that nobody around me could see because I did not talk about it, and nothing about my life looked different because of it. I worked. I saved. I clipped coupons at the grocery store every week until my son was embarrassed to be seen doing it with me, and then I clipped them alone. I wore my coats until the lining separated from the shell. I brought my lunch. I said no to myself for so long that no became the reflex, the automatic answer, before I had even heard the full question. But once a year or so, quietly, I did something else. There was a piece of land a neighbor's family wanted to sell quickly after he passed. Just wanted it gone, did not want to deal with it. I had a small amount set aside, more than people would have guessed, and I made them an offer. I did not know exactly what I was doing. I just knew land was land. Later there was a woman from my church, Dolores, who had been trying to open a seamstress shop for years. She was good. She was better than good. She could look at a garment and understand it the way some people understand faces, just by looking. She had the skill and she did not have the money, and I did not announce what I was doing, I just helped. That was 30 years ago. Dolores retired last spring. She sent me a card with a photograph of the shop on the front, and on the back she wrote, "None of this would have happened without you." I put it in the filing cabinet, in the front, not the back. I never talked about any of it. Not to my son, not to my neighbors, not to anyone. I just lived the same life I had always lived, except that underneath it, very slowly, something was accumulating, and I had been building toward something specific. Under the bed, and I have not said this out loud before, under the bed there was a shoebox. I had been writing my son letters, one for each birthday he had not yet had, starting from the year I first understood, really understood in my body, and not just in my head, that I was not going to be here forever. I had thought, there are things I want him to know, things I will not be there to say. So I started writing ahead. Some of the letters were long. Some of them were only a few sentences, because some years I did not know what to say, but I wanted to have said something. I wrote them on good paper, the kind with some weight to it, and I sealed each one in its own envelope and wrote the age on the outside. Open when you turn 64. Open when you turn 69. Open when you turn 72. I had been adding to that box for 20 years. The plan was that when I was gone, my son would find the box. He would find the letters, and he would find the documents in the filing cabinet, and he would understand all at once what the years had actually looked like from my side. The woman he thought had nothing The coupons, the same coat, the lunch brought from home every day. And underneath all of it, this. That was the surprise. I had been holding it for 20 years. I sat on the bed with the will in my hands, and I looked at his name for a long time, long enough for the room to get dark, long enough that I had to reach over and turn on the lamp. Then I tore the will in half, then in quarters. I kept going. I kept going until the pieces were small enough that I could hold all of them in one hand and they did not weigh much of anything. I sat there with them and breathed. The air in the room felt different after. I noticed that. I do not have a better way to describe it than that. I got up and went to the kitchen. I took the shoebox from under the bed first, set it on the kitchen counter, opened it. 50 envelopes, roughly. Each one with the age written on the outside in my handwriting. 61, 62, 63, all the way up. I did them a few at a time in the sink. The paper burned faster than I expected, especially the older ones. They had been in there a long time and they were dry all the way through. The newer ones took a moment longer. The smoke went straight up, thin and gray, and then it was gone, and then the next few. I rinsed the sink when I was done, turned off the tap, stood at the counter. I thought, tomorrow I need to call Harriet. That was all, just the next thing. Harriet has been my closest friend since we were both young women doing things I no longer need to describe. She has not knocked at my door in 60 years, and she was at my kitchen table by 9:30, with her reading glasses around her neck and a legal pad she pulled from her bag like she had been expecting the call. I told her what I needed to change. She wrote it down without comment. She has always done that. She does not perform feelings at you. She just helps you do the next thing, which is the quality I have valued most in a person my entire life. I gave her the account numbers, the property information, the interest in Dolores's shop, which had grown considerably since those early years. There was also some cash in an envelope in my sewing drawer that I had labeled in case the world ends. Harriet looked at that envelope and did not say anything, just wrote it down. At the top of the new document, the name she wrote was not a person. It was a residential home about an hour from here, a place that takes in older women who have been asked to go somewhere quiet. I had volunteered there once, years before. Painted walls, served meals, sat with women who had not had a visitor in months. I had sat with a woman once and asked her what she had done for work, what she had been good at, and she had looked at me like the question was strange, like she had not been asked anything about herself in so long, that a question like that took her a moment to process. I remembered the drive home that day, thinking, I never want to end up there. And here I was. So that is where the money went. I went to the wedding. People find that surprising. But I had been at every significant day of my son's life. I was not going to let the last one be the one I missed. I got up before the sun. I moved slowly in the mornings. My body needs time to come back to itself, which at 93 is not a complaint, just a fact. I bathed. I put on my good charcoal suit, the one I have had for many years that still sits the way good fabric is supposed to sit when the fabric is actually good. I pinned on my brooch, small silver thing, worn smooth in places. My mother gave it to me when I finished my schooling, and I have worn it to every occasion that mattered since then. I stood at the mirror for a moment. My body has gotten smaller. I notice it sometimes, and then I stop noticing it. My eyes are still exactly mine. Harriet arrived on time in her navy pantsuit with the sealed envelope in her bag. She had dressed like she was going to a board meeting, which I appreciated. She said, "Are you sure you are strong enough for this today?" I said, "I just need to see it once with my own eyes." The vineyard was beautiful. I want to say that plainly because I think it is important not to pretend otherwise. Green rows going up into the hills, white tents with the sides open, string lights even though it was morning, a quartet near the entrance playing something I did not recognize. I sat in the car for a minute before we got out. He really did spare no expense, I thought. And then I thought about where the expense was coming from. Not from me, as it turned out. What I had been building for 30 years was in a new document now, with a different name at the top. So whatever this had cost, it was not mine. I just wanted to be clear about that in my own head. We found the seats and sat down. My son came down the aisle, looking sharp and proud. He has his grandfather's walk, a certain kind of deliberate ease, like the ground is exactly where he expected it to be. I watched him, and I felt the thing you feel when you look at someone you made and raised and cannot unlove no matter what has happened. There is no name for that feeling that is exactly right. Paulette came after him. She was beautiful. The crowd made a sound all at once, that sound crowds make, and I understood why he had chosen her. I understood it and sat with it and did not try to make it into anything else. The officiant talked for a while. There was something about honoring the people who shaped you. My son shifted when that part came. He did not look back. The vows were long. Paulette cried during hers. My son smiled, that particular smile he has had since he was 12, the one that makes rooms turn toward him. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Everyone stood. I stayed in my seat, not out of spite. I just did not have the energy to stand, and I was not going to perform something for people who did not know who I was. Harriet leaned over and said quietly, "Now." I said, "Let them have the moment," and I meant it. When the guests started moving toward the reception tent, and my son and Paulette were over near the arch taking photographs, I turned to Harriet and nodded once. She stood up. She moved across the lawn without hurrying, without any announcement, just a woman who has been doing difficult things with composure for 60 years and knows how to walk through a room. Paulette saw her coming first. My son turned around. Harriet said, "Congratulations. This is from your mother." She handed him the envelope, turned around, walked straight back. I watched him open it from across the vineyard. He did it right there, which I had not expected. I thought he might wait, but he did not. He read it standing in the middle of his wedding day with his new wife next to him, and I watched his face move through several things I will not name. He looked up, across all the white flowers and the string lights and the guests in their pale colors. Across all of it, he found me. I picked up my bag. I walked back to the car. I had been there. I had seen it. That was what I had come for. He called 3 weeks later. I answered. I will always answer. That is just what I am. He said, "Mom, what did you do?" I said, "I updated my will. I had the right." He said, "How could you do this to me?" I thought about the lemon cookies sitting untouched on the plate. I thought about him on the edge of my sofa, on the edge, not back in it. I thought about Paulette's cream blazer and the word peaceful in the direction she had been looking when she said it. Past me, past my furniture, at some point slightly above my head, the way you look when you are speaking about something that is already mostly resolved. I did not say any of that. I said, "You came to my house and told me I would make your guests uncomfortable. You sat there and let her suggest a facility while I was in the room. I heard you. That is all. He went quiet. I said, I have loved you your whole life, and I am going to keep loving you. That is not going to change. But love is not a deed of property. Those were two separate things, and I had the right to decide them separately. He said, Mama, please. I said, I will always pick up when you call. Then I said goodbye and hung up. I sat in my chair afterward for a while. The street light outside my window has been flickering at a particular hour for about 2 years now, then going steady, then flickering again. I keep meaning to call the city about it. I have not called. I sat there and watched it do its thing and did not think about much. Eventually I got up. I went to the kitchen. I put the kettle on and stood at the counter waiting for it. Not sitting, just standing, listening to the water start to move. I heard later that the foundation had named a room after me. I had not asked for that. I do not need it. But I think about that room sometimes. I think about the women in it. Women who move slowly in the mornings the same way I do, whose bodies needed time to come back to themselves, who had envelopes in their sewing drawers and deeds to houses they had lived in for 30 years, and children who parked in the street instead of the driveway. I hope the chairs are comfortable. I hope someone asked them what they were good at. The house is still mine. I want to say that plainly because I think people assume certain things about a woman at 93. I am not part way out the door. I know where everything in this house is. I know which drawer sticks in the humidity. I know the sound the furnace makes at 2 in the morning, a particular low settling sound, like the house is adjusting itself, getting comfortable for the night. I have lived here long enough that I know what is the house and what is something else. I sleep well now. That is the thing I notice most when I try to say what changed. I go to sleep the way I did when I was young. The body just goes because it trusts the rest of the day is handled. I wake up in the morning and I make my tea and I sit by the window and I do not feel like I am managing how much of myself I show so that nobody gets uncomfortable. That is not nothing. I stopped buying the lemon cookies, not as a decision I made. I just stopped reaching for them one afternoon at the store and noticed it on the way home. That was all. Just I have been buying the ones with the chocolate on the bottom instead. I had been meaning to try them for years, kept reaching for the others out of habit. They are better than I expected. The filing cabinet is still in the closet. I got back down on my knees at 93 with their opinions, and I opened it once more after everything was done, after the wedding, after the call, after all of it. I found the folder in the back, final. I opened it and looked at the new will. The name at the top is the name I mean. That is the thing that stays with me when I try to explain what I feel now. Not that I was right, not that anyone was wrong, just that what is in that folder is honest. It says what I actually believe, in my own handwriting, with my own name at the bottom. I closed the cabinet. I stood up slowly. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on, stood at the counter, did not sit, just stood there, listening to the water heat up and let the house be quiet around me.